Here on the Hill, I teach a class called Drinking Cultures, the Anthropology of Alcohol Use. And I teach that class as a methods course every so often, turn our students onto the campus to do research on student drinking here. But I also teach it as a reading seminar. And when I teach it as a reading seminar, the goal is to survey widely the ethnographic literature on drinking. Um, and specifically with an aim towards understanding what it means to drink or what it means to be drunk. I think it's easy for Americans to lose sight in our pervasive social commentaries about meaningless drunkenness that there actually can be no such thing as meaningless drunkenness. I mean, it's the central attribute of humanity that we assign meaning to our behaviors, and drinking is no different. That is, anthropologists want to know, what do people get from drinking besides drunk, and what is it about the goal of intoxication, right, that can be meaningful to people at times. With our society's long history of temperance concerns, I think we also tend to forget that most people, both here, and I mean here on college campuses, including Kenya, but here in America and elsewhere in the world, most people are moderate drinkers. And there's meaning in that normative moderate alcohol use too. This is true whether we're talking about drinking at a neighborhood bar or over a Thanksgiving meal, or at an office party or a business lunch. There's meanings beyond the simple fact of intoxication associated with that drinking. And so that's what I try to do in this course, ignoring those meanings about the uses of normal, moderate alcohol consumption, focusing exclusively on the addictive character of alcohol, medicalizing it, right, to use the terms in the literature. May also explain why we're not, as a society, very good at alcohol intervention programming or alcohol education programming. When you seemingly only talk about alcohol as a problem, then you almost have to pretend that every alcoholic that you've ever seen woke up of a morning and said, I think I'm just going to start drinking so much that I can't stop and hurt my family and my friends and destroy my liver and die of cirrhosis. And it's highly, highly unlikely that any alcoholics came to problematic alcohol use that way. It's likely, in fact, that the people who abuse alcohol, whether in addiction or just in problematic alcohol-related behaviors, came to do that with the same intentions and goals as those of us that drink moderately. That is, they came seeking those same meaningful experiences as those who drink moderately. All right. So, how can we find out what sorts of contexts lead to problematic drinking if it's not against the backdrop of normative drinking and moderate consumption? Knowing that I teach ideas over a term and not over 4 minutes, give me a chance just to ask you to consider one comparison in the way that societies, us and another, structure alcohol provision, and see if we can't learn something about that with collegiate drinking experience, because I think we can. In 1988, Elizabeth Colson and Thayer Scudder wrote a book called For Prayer and Profit, outstanding ethnography that looks at alcohol use amongst the Gwembe Tonga over a 30-year period from 1956 to 1986. And they did field work well beyond that. That project's still ongoing. I mean, it's a really remarkable ethnographic project. And what they found was that the Tonga have brewed for centuries, and traditionally they brewed with grains that they grew, which meant that when the harvest season came, you brewed in plenty. Yeah. But as the year moved on, you rarely brewed at all. Yeah. And they suggest that this established a pattern, a cultural pattern of sorts amongst the Tonga, where you would drink episodically, right? That is, at the harvest season, there's lots of grain, you drink a lot. When the harvest is gone, it tails off, and towards the ends of the agricultural cycle, you may not be drinking any at all. Secondly, they drink unfiltered beers with the grains intact within them. We're so used to clear industrially brewed beers that we've lost the realization that there's actually a good deal of nutritional value inside of those unfiltered, grain intact beers. The downside of them is that in the environment in which the Tonga reside in Zambia, those brews only last for a 24 to 48 hour period. Once they are brewed, you must drink them, or else you're just wasting it. So they note that there's a second pattern beyond the episodic character of Tonga drinking. They had a tradition of drinking whatever they had until it was gone. Just if you put it in front of you, drink it till it's gone, because otherwise you're wasting the food value that's sitting in front of you. Those two things, Colson and Scudder, a tradition of episodic drinking and drinking what's in front of you till it's gone, presented as something of a problem for the Tonga with the advent of industrially brewed, clear bottled beers. Of course, those beers have an unlimited shelf life, I mean almost unlimited, and an enduring drinkability, right? If you will, the supply never runs out. And so what they found was that the Tonga, at the advent of these industrially brewed beers, experienced a sharp increase in alcohol-related problems in their society, specifically because Colson and Scudder said they had no means for learning institutionalized halting points yet. You didn't know when enough was enough or when too much was too much. And I would suggest to you that our college students across the country really are not that different. If they come to us with experience drinking alcohol, it was usually episodic. I mean, they didn't get it often, and it certainly wasn't continuously available. And because of our MLDA laws, they probably drank it quickly. I mean, in this case, not for the nutritive value of the food, but instead to dispose of the evidence, right? And then they hit the American college campus, and alcohol is seemingly ever present, and getting access to it, if you're underage, really is no tremendous challenge. But they then come to that drinking behavior like the Tonga with a relative inability to know institutionalized halting points. I have argued for years now, to largely deaf ears, I have to admit, for years now, that any time colleges institute restrictive rules on drinking, they create as many problems as they solve. The more restrictive the rules become, the more likely students will seek privacy of consumption, right? The more restrictive rules become, the more they'll drink quickly and in quantity to last for the entirety of a night's activities. The more restrictive those rules become, the more we endanger their lives. So there's a seeming paradox here. The more restrictive our rules, the more we endanger those whom the rule is intended to protect. That's a bit of a problem. And of course, all of that begs the question of why it is they will seek alcohol and intoxication despite laws which deny them the right to it. The answer to that question is incredibly and richly culturally complex. It ranges from ways that we construct friendship to ways that we celebrate in good company. It ranges from ways that we express our gendered identities to the ways that we cope with social ambiguities, to the way we seek to express our own personality, to ways that we opportunistically network. Right? But that is a semester's investigation and controlled study as opposed to a 4-minute lecture. There you go.
Thank you very much.